Hello everyone and welcome to Sips and Stories. My name is Elizabeth and in today's video I will be doing my fall TBR. So it is finally upon us, fall, my favorite time of year. I know it's many of your favorite time of year as well, and so many books just have that fall feeling, or I will not allow myself to read some books until it's fall and winter because they have just very cozy vibes. And so I've compiled a wonderful list of books that I want to share with you today. So grab your favorite fall beverage of choice and join me as we discuss these terrific reads. The first book that I have to share with you should come as no surprise, and that is Cider with Rosie by Lori Lee. And this book has been on my TBR forever. I think it's supposed to be a memoir of a young boy growing up in Cotswolds, I think around the turn of the century, I believe. Don't quote me on that. And it's just about all his childhood memories, and I have no idea who Rosie is. Is Rosie his mom, his aunt, his grandmother, a distant relative? I have no idea. All I know is that everyone loves this book. It's a beloved classic. It's supposed to be very cozy, very heartwarming, and I think perfect for this time of year. Also, my addition to my vintage Red Spine Classics edition, look at that cover. That's fall if I ever saw it. The harvest, those late summer, early fall flowers, and even the title of this book, Cider with Rosie, that just demands that you read it in the fall. So I'm really looking forward to this, and I'm kind of glad I don't know much about it going into it because I just suspect this is going to be a fantastic read. So excited about this one. And I don't know about you, but at this time of year too, I think of back to school. I think of buying school supplies and backpacks. And I wanted to read a couple books that had to do with going back to school or school in general. The first book that I have is The Boy at the Back of the Class by Anjali Ralph. I'm sorry if I mispronounced her name, and just look at that cover. The cover is gorgeous with his backpack. This book is actually very serious and very heartwarming. So I listened to a TED Talk, which I will link below, where Anjali was speaking about the refugee crisis and the Syrian refugee crisis. And she's basically a humanitarian. That's how she started her career. And she wanted to do something different than just raising money and visiting refugee camps. She wanted to raise more awareness about the situation, especially with children. And so she just sat down one day and decided to write a children's book about it. I mean, she is amazing. And this is the book she wrote, The Boy at the Back of the Class. And this book has basically just started a whole campaign, a whole effort to help refugees and particularly children. And so I just love her for that, and you have to listen to this woman speak because she's such an excellent public speaker and she's very articulate and so elegant. I basically just love this author so much that I knew I had to buy this book. So I'm not even sure I'll like the book or what it's about, but I just trust this author. I believe it's about a young refugee boy from Syria, and his name is Ahmet, and he is going to a school in London. He's been separated from his family. All that he has with him is this red backpack, so I think there's some significance to the backpack. And then I think it's just a story about all of the school children banding together and raising awareness and trying to reunite Ahmet with his family. So it sounds very heartwarming and just like a terrific read. So I'm super excited about this one. Speaking of school, nothing says fall to me more than a New England boarding school. And so for my next TBR pick is A Separate Piece by John Knowles. This book has been on my TBR for forever. This is another one I'm not 100% sure what it's about. I know it's a coming of age story about two boys, Gene, a lonely intellectual, and Phineas, a handsome daredevil. So I think it's about an event that happens between these two boys, and I suspect it's a tragedy. I don't feel like that's a spoiler. I just think it's common knowledge that there's some sort of tragedy that happens. And I believe the beginning, the narrator, one of the boys, goes back and is revisiting this story. So he's an adult, and then he's going back in time and telling the story. So I read like the first chapter, the first few pages, and he's just walking through this gorgeous New England boarding school. And so I definitely knew I had to read this during the fall. Super excited about this, and I'm also hoping that I like it more than Catcher in the Rye. Catcher in the Rye is not my favorite book. I understand the significance of that book. I think it's an important book for a lot of people. However, it just never resonated with me, where I'm hoping that this book has similar themes and that I will enjoy it more. Already I can tell that I like John Knoll's writing more. He's just more of a descriptive writer, and so I think I'm going to like this a little bit more. So I'm looking forward to this, and it's always good to read a classic. And the next book I have, so during the fall I also like to read fantasy as well. The book that I read last year for my fantasy pick was The Shadow of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. I loved that book. I thought it was a lot of fun. It was strange. There were some odd elements to it. I haven't started with the second book because, as you know, he hasn't finished the third book. But if you're curious about Name of the Wind, I highly recommend it. It was very fun and it's perfect for fall. However, this year my fantasy pick is a classic, and that is Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. So I have to be honest, I've read The Hobbit. The Hobbit's fantastic. However, I have never read the trilogy of The Lord of the Rings because of those movies. So I think Peter Jackson has ruined Lord of the Rings for me. And because those movies are so over the top, they're so violent, I really just don't like the orcs and the goblins. I've just never felt like reading this book. So I know that that is a tragedy because this is such a beloved classic. And I started and stopped this book several times. And one thing I will say about J.R.R. Tolkien's writing is that it's very funny, it's very clever, he's super smart, and the characters are much more endearing in the books than they are in the movies. So I'll just put that out there. And so I'm hoping that I can finally finish this trilogy, start it this year, finish it up in 2021, once and for all, and just be done with this. I picked up this old mass market paperback in particular for that very reason, because I find it easier to read mass market paperbacks. I find that my reading goes a little quicker. So I'm hoping that this book will help me get through the story. Also, I just have to mention that my edition, Gandalf looks exactly like Kenny Rogers. So I just find that hilarious, and that makes me want to read this book even more. Looking forward to Lord of the Rings and finishing it once and for all. The next book that I want to read this fall is a chunky classic. So I know that Victober is right around the corner, and already some of my favorite booktubers like Kate Howe and Lucy and Katie are putting out Victober videos and challenges. And those wonderful ladies, they have chosen Shirley by Charlotte Bronte as their Victober pick. I looked at my library and I called around to some local bookstores, and they don't have Shirley. And I did not want to order it online and spend more money on Amazon than I possibly could. So I decided to pick up a book that I already own, and that is Villette by Charlotte Bronte. So I'm still going to be reading a Charlotte Bronte, just not Shirley. I've wanted to read Villette in particular for years. In fact, I tried to read it about 10 years ago, as you can see. I stopped about halfway through. And I stopped because I thought this was going to be similar to Jane Eyre. And just so you know, Jane Eyre is my all-time favorite book. Like, if I had to pick one book that I love more than any other, I would pick Jane Eyre. So I had a lot of expectations going into this, and when I started reading it and realized that the characters were so mean and so horrible to the main character Lucy, I gave up on it. But I have since wanted to pick it back up again. I do believe it is about a lonely woman who just overcomes her feelings of loneliness and jealousy and this internal rage that she has, and she just learns to accept herself. So I've been experiencing a lot more of those feelings now as an adult, so I think I can identify with Lucy's character a little more now, and I'm looking forward to this book more. I also know that Charlotte Bronte endured some personal tragedy as well before she wrote this book. So all her siblings basically died, Anne and Emily and her brother. And so this book, I think, is kind of catharsis for her. So the fact that she could sit down and still write after enduring that tragedy in her life fascinates me. And I just love Charlotte. She is my favorite Bronte sister. Love her. And I'm really looking forward to this book for my Victober pick. The next book that I want to read is The Girl Who Circumnavigated Fairyland in a Ship of Her Own Making by Catherine M. Valente. So I'm sorry that this book does not have a dust jacket. I got it for $1 at a thrift store. So I'm sorry, I will totally buy a book that does not have a dust jacket, especially if it's a hardback, if it's only $1. This book was hugely popular, I want to say about 5 years ago. So when I first started watching BookTube, way back in 2015, 2016, this book was all the rage. Every booktuber was talking about it, especially booktubers that love middle grade like I do. So I have had it on my shelf this whole time. However, the reason I have not read it, and this is such a geeky reason, is because the main character's name is September. I know, that's terrible, but I've always felt that I've had to read this book in September. So it is September as we speak, as we're recording, and I'm gonna finish this book once and for all. So out of all these books, this is the one I'm gonna get to first. I've completely forgotten about what it's about, but basically the plot is in the title. It's a girl that circumnavigates Fairyland in a ship of her own making. Love that title, love the idea of this book, and I think it has something to do with World War II, not sure, we'll see, but this is one that I'm going to polish off sooner rather than later. And that's pretty much my TBR. I do have a bonus one to talk about, and that is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. So I recently finished this book about a month ago, and I read this during the height of summer when it was 90 degrees outside and I was sweating, and I read it with, a nice soda, a nice iced drink by my side. However, I will say that this book is more autumnal than anything else. Both of Erin Morgenstern's books, The Night Circus and Starless Sea, but particularly The Night Circus, really fit this time of year. They're very cozy, they're very atmospheric, and there's a lot of autumn things happening in this book. There is not only the Night Circus, which is black and white and red all over, but there is apple cider in this book, there are caramel apples, chocolate covered popcorn, a lot of autumnal foods in this book. Also, there are just cozy house parties in London, and a lot of pivotal scenes happen during inclement weather, during rain or snow or something like that. So I would have to say that I highly, highly recommend that if you have not picked up this book or Starless Sea and you've been meaning to read either or, to read them right now. They fit this time of year perfectly. And I wish I had known that, because I might have held off on The Night Circus, but it's too good to miss. And I also don't even think of Erin Morgenstern as a writer. Like, I don't consider her an author. I consider her a word painter. She basically just paints these beautiful images in your mind, and they're just so cozy and warm and elegant and a whole lot of fun. So just gonna put that out there. I know these books are hugely popular, and I really don't need to say more, but now is the perfect time to read them. So there you have it, everyone. Thank you for joining me for my fall TBR. I am so excited about all of these books, and I cannot wait to dive right in. So thank you for joining me, and have a terrific day.